Hey y'all, this is Chris, and you're listening to One Cross Radio. And this probably should have been the first podcast, but I was so excited to record and share that interview with Dave that I just kind of dived right in. So, just wanted to share a little bit about myself and the podcast, because to be honest, like, one thing I've seen with the podcast and the website, 2099onecrossstreet.com, is that this has a wider reach than I had anticipated. And not everyone who accesses it knows me or knows the viewpoint that I'm coming from or the things I'm passionate about. So that's what this podcast is, just a little bit about me and what you can expect. You can expect more interviews and talks about Christian living with people in the church and from myself, along with talks, including chats with other people and myself about things I'm thoroughly into: pop culture, music, comic books, and film, and TV shows and that kind of thing, media. So first and foremost, I want to say I am married to an amazing wife. Her name is Jill, and I am so blessed to be her husband. She is such an example of Christ's love, patience, sacrifice, and giving that she just inspires me, and she always encourages me and is so supportive, and I wanted to give her a special shout out. So we live in the Hamilton area in the Sherman hub, and I did not grow up here. I was a former Toronto boy from the borough of East York, which is nestled between downtown Toronto, southern North York, and Scarborough. So it's an interesting cross section of communities and people. I went to George Brown College. My education is in social service work. I am also on the side slowly pursuing a Dimensions of the Faith certificate. It's a $25 program that you can do through iTunes University and Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary. I'd love to go to Bible college, but unfortunately, since I've realized that I would like to go, Bible college is expensive, and it just hasn't financially been in the cards. So this has been a great way. A friend and father-in-law mentioned to me, and it's been a really cool way to learn more about the history of the church and New Testament theology, Old Testament theology, missions, that kind of thing. It's a lot of work because there's 10 subsections with roughly 15 lectures each, and each go about an hour. So it's pretty interesting. And if you've been through seminary, if you haven't, you just want to learn more about the Lord, more about church history, including church schools, I'd really recommend it. Like I said, $25 through iTunes University and Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary. I was born and raised in East York from an awesome mom, a great aunt, and while he was alive, an awesome dad, a dad who got me into film, especially Star Wars. Star Wars is my first nerd love. Also took us to see Jurassic Park and Titanic, which I have fond memories of. From there, in 1999, my dad passed away because of pancreatic cancer. Unfortunately, it was too late when the doctors discovered it. They couldn't do anything, so Dad lasted about 6 months, and that was right before I turned 12. From there, I kind of walked away from the church, but God, in His sovereignty and grace, used 4 girls from St. Catherine's who became dear friends of mine, who I met in a circumstance that was there was too much there where it could be a coincidence. It was not. It was God reaching out. I was downtown with a friend. We decided to go check out the Old Edge 102 near the Eaton Center and see who was playing, because they did Friday night shows. It just so happened that there was a band there, which is this podcast and the website's namesake, of One Cross. In there I met 4 girls named Aiden, Pascal, Sarah, and Em. And through their friendship, reaching out to me, and Tommy, and some other people, and my friend from Calvary, one of my best friends, Jen Bigwood, now Jen Percy, God pulled me back. Through the girls in St. Catharines and the hanging out with them over the years, like almost weekendly, I fell in love with that stretch of the Golden Horseshoe from Hamilton on, and God took me to an event called Pitch and Praise, which is an awesome event with there's great speakers, there's so many activities, and bands and everything. It's well worth looking up on the web. I grew up in an AGC church. I ended up running some ministries out of it and volunteering as well. God blessed me with a lot of opportunity there. The AGC is a little known denomination outside of Canada. It's the joke is it's the non-denomination denomination. But in the coming weeks and months, I will have my dear friend and my father-in-law who works for the AGC, Dr. Tom Lamshed, Pastor Tom Lamshed, and about 15 other titles. He'll be coming on the podcast, and we'll be talking more about it, so definitely check that one out when it drops. During that time and my life, I grew a love of film, not just watching, the acting process, the whole process of seeing a film come together from just the script, the screenplay, through the finished product. I almost said project there, and that's what happened. The whole thing interests me every step along the way, and I eventually got to actually help film a movie, which was so influential for me. Yeah. And then I also love music, everything from amazing Christian hip-hop like Lecrae, Andy Mineo, and the whole 116 crew, right down through through Metallica, the Beatles, Elvis. Like, I grew up on rock and roll and Motown and Neil Young because my family would play the old 1050 Chum AM station, and they had like the 60s at 6 and the 70s at 7. I don't think they did the 80s at 8, and they definitely didn't play the 90s. But heck, I love 90s pop. I will happily sing along with Backstreet Boys. They're just fun. Music is fun. And I also love comics. I love that whole medium. Just the artwork, the stories that it can tell. It's just a great medium. I've loved Batman since I was a child, and Batman Begins later became like one of my favorite movies, and Empire Strikes Back is my favorite movie ever. Don't know why I'm adding that in, just am. But I love the Batman comics, the animated series from the 90s. Deadpool became one of my favorites because he's just for a character that started off as an entire like rip-off of DC's Deathstroke, he became his own character and is so interesting. Not a good guy by any means, but a guy with a very warped sense of reality and his actions, but he tries to do good things. And he's a crazy interesting character, so fun to read. Marvel's Moon Knight is interesting, and it's not a rip-off of Batman. There are similarities, but they're entirely different characters. I loved Brian Lee O'Malley's run on Scott Pilgrim. Great 6-volume series that you should check out. Jeff Lemire's Essex County and the Underwater Welder have tremendous artwork and great storytelling for non-superhero comics. And then the Zelda manga series is one I just recently found. And they're so good because that's such a fun world to visit, but unless you can play the games, it's difficult to. So it's a great way of distilling down the story from the games. I wish there was more Zelda stuff available. I don't know if they'd ever be able to do a film series of it because the stories are so disjointed and there's like 3 timelines there, and it's difficult. There's a great YouTube video you should look up. I might post it in the link below on the website. Yeah, I love me some comics, and friends like Steve Lambert, a guy who loves comics as well. We can talk about it till we're blue in the face. So yeah, I just wanted to share some of my favorites. And I've been blessed, so blessed by God to have so many influential experiences with friends. Like I said earlier, I got to be a part of a film that you can look up on YouTube. It's called Steen's Revenge. I got to work on it with a friend named Mike Knowles. It was a sequel to a film he did in college. Mike's a guy I've known since 6th grade, and we bonded over a love of Star Wars and mutually insulting each other all the time, as some guys' friendships are formed, and girls for that matter. And yeah, I got to work on the film with him, and it was just such a blast. Like, I got to be a producer, so a mini dream of mine was to have my name on a film's credit, and I got it, and it was so awesome to see. And being a part of the process was so much fun. I was able to kind of location scout with Mike, hold the boom mic, and do a little bit of producing stuff. And oh man, what else? And I came up with a montage of death sequence that was used in the movie, and got some friends in on that, which was just so much fun to do. But through there, my love of interviewing people kind of came out. So after Steen, a couple months later, for a special feature for the DVD, I think, but it's on YouTube, we did a thing called An Evening with Mike Knowles at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, where I just got to do a Q&A with Mike about the process of film, his process as a director, and the elements going from script writing to the screen and post and everything. And then about 2 years after that, I got to do another session, which was called An Evening 2 with A Game with Mike and star Dinesh Hanbury, which was so much fun. And Dinesh is such a talented actor, and Mike is so talented, and I wish both were working more. And they're just fun guys to hang out with. So if you can, I hope you check it out. There is some language, but it's to me worth watching. It was a very enjoyable time. And through that, I fell kind of in love with doing the interview thing. And the interviews are something that became the Chat With series on an older website, and you can find them all on the website on 2099onecrossstreet.com, where I was interviewing friends from the church and in various ministries, be it missions, youth work, pastoral, what have you. And just getting some of that, asking the same questions, but getting different perspectives and different answers is crazy interesting to me, and hearing the heart of people. And through that, while those have been fun, a brother-in-law of mine who's an awesome guy and inspiring to me, who runs a restaurant called Batty's downtown in downtown Toronto. If you get a chance to check it out, it's at Lansdowne and Bloor. Great food and awesome atmosphere. Anyways, he mentioned to me, like, you should really consider doing these in person, just because stuff does get lost when you're just focusing on the questions, or if you're not able to even write it down in person and you're doing it over email or Facebook. So Alex, he inspired me to want to start doing them in person and on audio. And then other friends were like, you should really consider doing the podcast. You'd have fun with that. And it's true. And my wife has been nothing but supportive and encouraging and amazing. So that's kind of where we are. Another thing I got to plug for experiences, if you're at a church and you don't have a small group, plug in. And I don't mean a small group where you're just going through the questions and that's where you're at. Do your life with these people. It's something that St. Clair does called Mishfam, and I've had the absolute blessing to have something like this from before with a group of guys, Caleb, Hal, Biggie, Alan Bigwood, Steve Lambert, who's a pastor at Forward Baptist, and Dave Lombardo, who's a pastor at the Upper Room, where that became church. We were raw and vulnerable with each other. We held each other accountable with our various struggles. We studied the Word together. We looked at what it meant to live out our faith, and we challenged each other. Even though most of us are coming from a Calvinistic perspective, we'd still wrestle beyond that and look at things through different lenses and ultimately try to emulate Christ. And the reason I recommend this is that group helped shape me. And people will help shape you. The girls from St. Catherine's and Jen, if God didn't use them and if he didn't open me up to it, I don't know where I'd be. The guys came around at the exact right time. We ran in the same circles, and God blew my mind with those guys and continues to do so. Just if you can get plugged into a small group, do it. And be intentional with it. Don't just make it about, okay, it's this thing I go to during the week and we talk about scripture and that's it. No, talk about scripture, but be raw and vulnerable. You can be pruned, you can be sharpened. Yes, it's painful, but it helps you grow, and God can do so much great through there. Another guy I gotta shout out who's been an influence to me is Cameron Buttrin. He really got me into wanting to blog more. So that's where the two former sites and the now new website came from. I used to blog, but it would be an audience to no one, and Cam got his own website. He was really intentional with it, so he inspired me big time. Some other influences I want to shout out are some pastors. He came up in the last podcast, but Mark Driscoll, the Lord used him so much for me in my late teens and early 20s. I know he's not everyone's bag, and I wouldn't recommend him to everybody. And yes, he did do stuff that was dumb and that was bad, but that doesn't mean we throw out everything. And his willingness to engage culture in frank cultural terms, especially sexual issues, was so helpful to me that his outspokenness was an influence. Matt Chandler is a guy I learn a lot from. Francis Chan, David Platt, John Piper, but also friends and local pastors. Pastor Matt Pamplin, who will be on here at some point from St. Clair, Dave Arnold, my boy Dave Lombardo, all my friends, and Pastor Steve Lambert. These are guys I go to for learning all the time, who inspire me not only in their teaching gift and their community gift, but also how they love their wives, how they treat their wives and treat other people. They're just such an influence on me. Podcaster wise, stuff that really made me start thinking about doing this more are a couple people. Rhett and Link, who do the Good Mythical Morning series on YouTube, which has become a daily thing for Jill and I, and their podcast Ear Biscuits. They're just so much fun, and seeing them do it, it's kind of like, why not? And through the opportunities and their hard work, they're now they're blowing up, man. They're doing books, they're doing their Buddy System series. Linkara, who did the History of Power Rangers series, which is so entertaining and reignited a childhood love of Power Rangers, which got me into the Boom Studios comic, which is excellent, and got to read, venture into the Japanese part where Power Rangers lifts a lot of its footage from Super Sentai, which is rough to get through, even if you're watching. I'm not knocking it, it's difficult to get through. I'd love it if there was more comics on that. Side tangent over. Linkara, and I can't remember his last name, but Rob. His fan base is called Rob Core. He does a series on YouTube called Comics Explained, which, if you're into comics, is great to check out. There's a lot of great stuff, and a guy I used to really be into, Kevin Smith. Kevin Smith, I'll admit straight up, he's an influence on me. His writing is always sharp, even if I don't like the language he's using or agree with the conclusions that he comes to with stuff. If you ever read his book, My Boring Butt Life, I changed the title because I don't like to swear. He is so raw and vulnerable there, like oversharing definitely, but just allowing himself to be that exposed is interesting. Like, he's living that open. And there's a great heartbreaking story in there called Me and My Shadow, where it chronicles his lifelong friend Jason Muse's struggle with drugs, and it's just so interesting. But he's got a bunch of podcasts. The one that I dig the most is Fat Man on Batman, And while I'm watching those, I'm like, why not, man? You love talking about movies. You love talking about your faith. If Silent Bob is doing it, why not? That's not a knock on him. It's just, he's made no gripes saying, I was working at a convenience store and I just pursued this filmmaking. And then he likes talking and doing the Q&A stuff, and that led him to the podcast. So with that kind of why not attitude, why not? So I gotta give him shout out there. Those are some of the things that inspire me and influence me to getting to this point. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to give y'all a little bit of a background on myself if you didn't know me, and if you do, hey, this might have still been interesting. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. I hope you'll keep listening and consider sharing. Before I go, the other thing I want to say, actually there's two things I want to say. The first is, expect more talks on pop culture. I'm excited to do the movie talks and the comic book talks. I'm excited to share my faith with y'all. I'm excited to share the truth and love and grace of Jesus Christ, who offers a salvation that is completely undeserved and is completely unfair. I'll let that sink in. It is not fair that we can be saved. And I'm excited to talk about that in future times. There's going to be that. I'm also excited to talk about movies, Godzilla and stuff, because movies, Godzilla, Doctor Who, like, I can talk about pop culture and all the nerddom stuff till I'm blue in the face, because it's just so much fun and so good for the most part. Yeah, and the other thing I want to say is, if you haven't checked it out, watch that new Star Wars trailer. Oh my goodness, it is so good. Star Wars is making the best trailers right now. I'm kind of excluding Rogue One, because for the most part we knew where that story was going. But if you look at The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, with The Force Awakens, yes, the movie ended up being A New Hope redone. But the trailer only featured shots from the first half hour of the flick and maybe 2 or 3 from later. So you couldn't piece the story together. The Last Jedi, yeah, I'm sure it's not all, that doesn't all happen in the first half hour, but holy cow, it shows enough in a way where it gets you hype, but you don't know where the story's going. Like, it leaves you in a way where you think like, oh snap, is Rey going to the dark side? I don't think so. And I think that it's going to be stuff from all across the movie where you can't just be able to know the story of the movie. The only thing that would have made that trailer better would have been if it had laser shots set to the double kick drum beat from Metallica's One. Which, after that amazing Punisher trailer, I'm just like, every trailer should have that. Heck, re-release Bambi and put One in there. Just do it. It would make it more epic. On that joke note, I want to say, hope you have a good day, and thanks for listening, and God bless, my friends. Take care.